Good morning, Burbank. Good to see all of you here this morning. Facebook land, if you're watching, you know the drill. Check in. Tell us you're there. Write a comment. It is so good to see. Everybody sits towards the back, so I have to walk towards you so I can see who's here. All right. Good to see everybody. So once again, we're talking about change, and we're talking about belief, action, change of belief, because of change means change of action. Of course, we like change if it's our idea. We don't like change if it's somebody else's idea. And so I want to begin with this quote by Heraclitus. How many have heard of Heraclitus? That's okay. It's not on the test. How many have heard this statement? You can't step in the same river twice. Okay? He believed the world is in constant flux. He said this like 2,500 years ago. Is he right? He is right. I can't believe how many changes I have seen in the world, right? I mean, I existed before microwaves, microwave ovens, and all those other kinds of things. Anybody else exist before microwave ovens? How many thought we arrived to the promised land when we got a microwave oven? Yeah. Okay. So the world is in constant flux. One of the things that I want you running in your mind is this idea of ancient wisdom. How many here like ancient wisdom? All right. Anybody? Sounds too old. The world's changing. Why would you want ancient wisdom? How many want modern knowledge? Anybody? How many just want to know how your cell phone works and be able to control it? All right. Okay. So we're talking about change. And because of change, I think leadership has to change. Not just the whole idea of like getting a new leader, but a new leader that has the skills of what's coming around the corner. Anybody know what I mean by that? Okay. So I want us to think briefly about this as we begin our sermon here. And what would your response be when Pastor Alex arrived here in a month from now? And on his first Sunday, he says, I am so glad to be here, but I was walking around the office and I couldn't find the diddle machine. Where is the mimeograph or the stencil machine? And I really need a Thomas guide for Burbank. You guys got a typing pool? How many remember typing pools? Would you be going, danger, Will Robinson? Right? So the question I want to begin with this morning is, what kind of skills, characteristics of a new leader would you like to see? All right? So I'm going to put new leader here. All right? And I'm not just talking about Pastor Alex who's coming. I'm talking about the leaders of the church as well. So what would you look for?
Personal accountability.
Oh, I like that one. I don't know how to write that all in one word. It's more than just accountability, personal. All right. What else? New leader. What's that? Caring. Okay. I'm going to put pastoral care. I like that. That's because pastoral care. And I'm just going to put caring right there. What else? Communications. I'm going to put good here. Communications. Trustworthy. Oh, I like that one. I think you said empathetic, right? Okay.
I was going to.
Okay. What else? Oh, enthusiasm. Okay. All right. Involvement, good. All right, what else? Community-oriented. This church has a long tradition, community-oriented, all right? It's a very impressive tradition in this church. What else? All right. We have stepped through the threshold. Because all of this could be considered ancient wisdom, couldn't it? This hasn't changed. But what did you say? Adaptability to change. All right, let me give you an idea of what I was thinking about as we pass through this threshold. I would like to see a new leader who understands AI. And not only understands AI, but uses AI efficiently, in a competent way, because, okay, remember a typing pool? We don't need typing pools because everybody can type on their computer now. That saved a lot of time. When I first joined the military in 1973, I was a clerk typist. That's what they give to a lot of people who can't have any other skill, you know? And I went into the typing pool in 1973, and there's like, you know, half a dozen to a dozen, depending, right? But because I actually could type, not everybody in the typing pool could type. And I could type on a manual typewriter 100 words a minute. That was fast, right? That was fast. So eventually, I became the typing pool, all right? Because they had to get rid of all these other people who are like, because that's what the typing pool was. We no longer need a typing pool in the military or in the business world because everyone types. All of a sudden, there's this efficiency thing that takes place because of personal computers. Are you with me on that? This is important now. Because if you could take the idea of what personal computers did to the office, okay, save a lot of time, made it more competent, you didn't have to wait around or dictate or anything like that. AI is going to do the same thing. You know, that typing pool is going to become just one person in a sense, okay, with AI. How many know that kind of thinking right now? This is just around the corner. AI is coming. AI is going to make a big impact out there. But this is one of my frustrations with the church. I remember when copy machines came out. And churches were like the last one to jump on the copy machine. They thought, you know, this is good. We're only using it for bulletins, you know. And it took a long time for a lot of churches to accept the copy machine. We can't do that with AI. We got to be able to have new leaders who understand AI. I know some of you are getting nervous about this, and what does this have to do with the Bible? You'll see in a second here. I would like to see a new leader who understands global understanding of culture. What I mean by that is, and we're going to get here in a couple of minutes, Generation Z, their world, in a sense, is more connected, smaller than my generation. The world gets smaller with computers, doesn't it? All right. Let me give you an example of what I mean. In high school, this is confession time, I liked really hard rock. I mean, really hard rock, where I didn't even know what the lyrics were. If someone said, "You know any lyrics to your song?" No, you know. But I also liked Elvis Presley. That's weird, isn't it? I was probably the only kid in high school who liked Elvis and hard rock. In a digital world, I could probably find that group, couldn't I? Because if you're in high school back then, whatever you liked, there weren't a lot of people to pull from. But in the digital world, you could find the Elvis and hard rock people. Does that make sense? Okay, that's a weird example of what I'm trying to say, that the Generation Z, and I want to talk Generation Z today, They have a different understanding of culture. It's more diverse, I believe. It's more connected, I believe, than what we have today for our generation. I also would like to see someone who possesses the gift and talents to navigate the chaotic culture of today. How about you? Wouldn't that be interesting? All right, hang on to it. Don't panic. Okay. So, I also would like to see a leader who understands that there are people out there who are either hostile or indifferent to the church. Is that true? 50 years ago, the church was the establishment. It was the way. It was how things were working. I mean, there were stores that were closed on Sundays. You know what I'm saying? That's not the world today. I believe our culture is more hostile to Christianity than it has been in a long time, or just plain indifferent. We need somebody who understands that. Okay, so as we pause just for a moment, I want to get a list of your heroes and heroines, because I want to see if there's some kind of connection between leaders and that. Somebody you admire. You know, if they were, okay, here's how to do this. Who would you like to have dinner with tonight that's alive? Yeah, breathing. And not your spouse or friend or something like that. Someone that, if you said it, we would know who you're saying.
Katie Porter.
Katie Porter, okay. Okay. Porter, okay. Well, who else? Caitlin Clark. Okay. Who else? What's that? Can you spell that for me? That is why I'm so glad you're here. Okay, Amy. All right. What else? Breathing and alive, he says Jesus. Okay. I meant walking the planet right now. Okay, Obama. All right. All right. How many of these are entertainers in the entertaining realm? Like, you know, well, basketball is entertaining, hopefully, especially when your team wins. What's that? Athletes, okay. Politicians? Okay. All right. Hang on to this for a bit. All right. Whew. You're going, where is he going? Okay. So here's our question now. How many saw the billboard out there? Marquis, raise your hand. I just want to know. Shall we go rogue? You're going, what? Okay. The only reason why I picked the word rogue is because I like Star Wars. Okay? But what I mean by that, and it's probably a good word, is shall we go in a different way or a style with our leadership and what's going on? Something different. So we're going to ask that question. Shall we go rogue? So now we get to where you're going, hey, where's the Bible? Did Paul go rogue? You're going, how can that be? He's St. Paul. He's the establishment, you know? Did Paul go rogue? Raise your hand if you think he went rogue. All right. All right, let's take a look at this now. Did Paul go rogue? We started in Acts 16 last week, but I want to kind of remind us of what happened in Acts 15. Paul is finishing up his first missionary journey. All right? In his first missionary journey, he's focusing really on a couple of things. He goes to synagogues. That's part of his plan. He also goes to the marketplace, the agora. He's looking for Jewish people to become Christians, but he's also looking for Gentiles. That created a problem. Because when the church first started, it was actually Jewish. I mean, Jesus is Jewish. He went to synagogues. Paul, that's his pattern. Whenever he went to a new town, went to synagogues. He tried to, talk to Jewish people. But at this moment in the life of the church, someone like Peter and someone like Paul were going rogue in the sense of the established church in that moment. Because they were going to Gentiles. You got the story of Cornelius and Peter. Okay, that ruffled a lot of feathers. And so what happened was in Acts 15, they had the first annual conference. Okay? They gathered together in the Council of Jerusalem for that reason. Because if you're having Gentiles join the church, but you're not requiring them to be circumcised, that goes against the law of Moses. And so they had, it's done nicely in Acts 15, but really it was a brawl, okay? And we sometimes skip over that sometimes church councils can be a brawl, all right? And so in Acts 15, Paul and Peter, more Paul than Peter, because Peter kind of like steps over the line, comes back again, steps over the line. He's having a difficult time. Paul is just out there going rogue. And so Paul is arguing and creating theological arguments, as we could see in his letters, that the Gentiles don't have to be circumcised. That's huge. We don't realize how huge that is today because we don't think in those terms. But 2,000 years ago, Paul was going rogue. All right. It doesn't end there. So what happens now is that in Acts 16, as we saw last week, and this is important now, there's disruption. Paul has a plan. His plan is to go to all these towns. What we saw last week was at one moment, the Holy Spirit is saying, no way, don't go there. At another moment, Jesus is saying, no way, don't go there. It's disruption because Paul's going, hey, I'm trying to do the Great Commission here, and they're forcing me out, not allowing me to do the Great Commission. And then he has a vision, as you remember last week. The man of Macedonia, which is on the other side of the sea, says, come here and help us. All right, come here and help us. Last week we asked, who are those people who are asking that today? Thank you for those of you who submitted what you thought would be the New Macedonia. So here we are in our scripture. Paul says yes to the vision. This is disruption. This is something new. He hasn't gone this far before. He's going to where the gospel, in a sense, has never gone before. And he gets in a boat, and he ends up in Macedonia, which is like North Greece, all right, in a town called Philippi. Philippi is what later Paul will write the letters Philippians to. You've heard of Philippians, right? That's a letter to the church in Philippi. When did the church in Philippi start? Right now. Okay? So on the Sabbath, Paul went outside the gate. This is disruption again. But remember what we said last week? Sometimes God speaks in the midst of disruption. If there's disruption in the church, this is one of the best times to listen to the voice of God. So what happens is, this is the Sabbath. Paul wants to go to the synagogue. That's his plan. But there is no synagogue because they couldn't find 10 good Jewish men in the city of Philippi. All right, think of that. In that whole city, there aren't 10 good Jewish men who can form a synagogue. That's the law. That's the rule of Judaism. So Paul goes down to the river. Why? Because the river is living water. And a lot of times, if there's no synagogue, worship takes place at living water. So what we find here is when he goes down there, there are women who are gathered there. Now, we just read that and not think anything about that, but 2,000 years ago, that was going rogue, right? Good rabbi like Paul, in a sense, or a clergy person, Jewish or whatever, he's not supposed to be talking to these kind of women like this. And one of them is named Lydia. Her name's not up there. Oh, yeah, there it is, right there. How many have heard of Lydia? One of the things that I found out on our trip was we in the West just read this passage and move on. But that's because we don't live there. But in the Greek Orthodox Church, Lydia is huge. They have a festival for her. She's big. She's like St. Francis of Assisi or someone like that. And we're just like, what? We don't get it. Because it's, in a sense, we're not relating to this. It's just Lydia. And only a couple of us have heard of Lydia, right? So who is this Lydia? Well, it says she was a worshiper of God. What that really means is she's a Gentile. She wants to be a Jew, but she hasn't finished the whole process. So, as we used to say, she's a wannabe Jew. Are you with me on that one? A wannabe Jew. She's not fully Jewish. She's a Gentile. But notice what she is. She sells purple cloth. What does that mean? It means she's rich. Purple was very expensive. And she is an entrepreneur. Okay, I'm going to erase this spot right here and give it to Lydia. Because Lydia, what we're going to find out, is a new leader. She's someone, in a sense, that goes rogue. Paul's going rogue in this moment. She's going rogue. What do we know about Lydia? If I was going to say it in one word, she's a CEO. All right? She is a go-getter. She is someone who sees a wall and turns it into a hurdle, and it doesn't stop her. Isn't that the kind of leader we need today? We need someone who goes, oh, there's a wall there. And you're looking at it and going, yep, that's a wall. The culture out there doesn't like us anymore. Lydia goes, that's not a wall. You call that a wall? That's a hurdle. How do we know this? Because she, in a sense, what we find out is the instigator of this group. She goes, there aren't 10 good Jewish men in this community, so we can't have a synagogue? No problem. We'll do our own thing. And they created, in a sense, their own synagogue next to the living water. All right? She gets things done. No excuses. Isn't that the kind of leader we need today? She's the kind of person that is innovative. She's an entrepreneur. In this culture 2,000 years ago, she's running her own business and doing extremely well. I think the church needs a Lydia today. Anybody with me? All right. What she got? Well, I'll just move. Lydia, new kind of leader, goes rogue. Do we need the Lydia today? Absolutely. How many agree with me? How many believe that we need new leaders in the church that can look at something and say, we can overcome that. We're not going to let that stop us. We're going to use whatever resources we have. We're going to go rogue. Okay. So, as the story continues, there's something else in this story that's really important. Lydia was a very successful entrepreneur. She didn't let things stop her. She was successful in life. She's the kind of person that people would look at her and go, I want to be like Lydia. All right? Notice this. Not only was she successful, but she knew something was missing. Did you hear that? She knew that even though as a person she's successful in life and in culture and in business, there's still something missing. In a sense, she is like the rich young ruler. How many know now what's going on here? Here's this rich young ruler. He's like Lydia. He's wealthy. He's got all kinds of things going for him, but he knew something was missing. And so he goes to Jesus because he's missing something. You know, he goes, I know I'm missing something, and I want you to tell me what I'm missing. Jesus gives him an answer, and he doesn't like that answer because he doesn't want to change his life. Sometimes when people are successful and everything's going their way, and they know that they're missing something, and then they hear this truth about what they're missing, they have to make a choice. And Lydia latched onto it, and her life was changed. But the rich young ruler said, no, I don't want to change my life. I know I'm missing something, but I'm just going to keep on doing. Do you know anybody like that? Do you know anybody who's like, look, you're missing something? And they don't have to be extremely successful. It's just easy to look at the extremely successful. And sometimes it's the extremely successful that finds it more difficult to what? To change. We need a Lydia or Lydias. We need new leaders who can see the disruption today and go, we can overcome. We don't have to stay within the walls of this room and try and be church. We need to go out there and find those Lydias. We need to recognize that we no longer are the only game in town. We are what theologians, they say Christendom. That means that society and culture is no longer, in a sense, the default mold, which is the church, which it was 50 years ago. That's why stores were closed. We need to go rogue and move away from the old ways. This is really important. There are still people in the church who believe that if we build it, they will come. And the reason why they believe it is because it worked 50 years ago, but it will not work today. All right? We need, in a sense, to move beyond the old models of evangelism. Now, I know people don't like that word, but I want to talk about Gen Z here. Okay? Gen Z was born 1999 to 2013. They're coming. They're coming. All right? They're here already, but I mean, we're hoping they would come to our pews or a pew near them. All right? But the old model of evangelism is not going to work for them. The old model of evangelism will not bring them here. Okay. So, as you know, some people say Einstein said this. I don't know. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. The church sometimes falls into that trap when it comes to evangelism. We need to think a different way. We must go rogue. Now, here's the hurdle, not a wall. We need to share ancient truths in a new way. Now, this is the problem right now. I'm just going to, as you know, I'm not a Gen Z. I don't even play one on TV. All right. I kind of think they share some of the similarities that some of us boomers had. All right? We just have to go back into those memories. If you're my age, we had a lot of sayings from plastics, from The Graduate. But one of our sayings was, we don't trust anybody over 30. Anybody remember that one? We had sayings like, my parents just don't understand. It's different today. Right? Okay. They just don't get it. I believe Gen Z is singing the same chorus. I believe Gen Z is looking at people in the church and say, they don't get it. I believe that Gen Z is looking at the church and saying, they're answering questions that I'm not asking, and they're not giving answers to the question that I am asking. If you only remember one thing today, that is really important. We got to ask and answer the questions that they're asking. Now, and that's the reason why they think the church is irrelevant. All right. So here's a suggestion for Gen Z. So if you have any Gen Zs in your life, you're going to get a push notification a couple hours from now that will help with this kind of conversation. It's not good enough to really get the conversation started. You have to use your own creativity to start the question, but it'll have questions once the conversation gets going. I highly suspect, and this is what we need to ask and we need to listen to Gen Z people about, okay? We need to ask the question, what is true? Because I highly suspect, I don't know if they would admit that they're confused, but I think we live in a confusing time to what is true, all right? Some of that is because of AI. You know? And if you know what I'm talking about, that's good. If you don't, talk to somebody who can tell you. But I can remember when I was asking the question, what is true? It was, all my life in a sense, but in the early 70s, 1970 to 73, this was a question that was plaguing me. And I think it's a question that plagues Gen Z as well. What is true? Now, I didn't live far from Huntington Beach Pier. And if you don't know what that is, let me explain something. In the early 70s, Huntington Beach Pier was an area that a lot of, I call them Jesus freaks, okay? And if you don't know what that word is, ask somebody that does. I think the movie calls it the Jesus Revolution or Jesus Putin people or Jesus Movement. The pier was the spot, all right? And they would congregate there with their Bibles, and they would evangelize other piers, okay? It was all about young people from basically, high school and young adults congregating around the Huntington Beach Pier. And because I didn't live very far, I would go there a lot with my friends, okay? And pretty much every time we went down there, we were confronted by the Jesus freak. And after the confrontation, we would laugh all about it because, and this is getting back to the question of what is true, they would create this wonderful argument, but we would ask, why should I believe that? Why should I think that is true? And they would always say, because it's in the Bible. All right? It's in the Bible, therefore you gotta believe it. And our response would be, but I don't believe in the Bible, so therefore I don't have to. They would not understand that argument. How many know what I just said? Okay? If you don't have the same trustworthy source of information when you're having a conversation with somebody and you keep pointing back to it, it does not work. And so if you're talking to a Gen Z and you go, well, you gotta believe it because it's in the Bible, the Gen Z is like, no, I don't. You could believe it, but I don't have to believe it because I don't believe in the Bible. How do you know? This is important. Raise your hand if you understand what I'm saying. Trustworthy sources of information have to be in agreement, okay? Just because it's in the Bible doesn't mean someone has to believe it. Now, at the same time, I know I'm going long, I'm sorry. At the same time, at this time period in my life, I was a second-generation atheist. And this is important because Gen Zs are either second or third-generation atheists, all right? First-generation atheists, one of the things that they share in common is that they turn their backs on the church, but they don't turn their backs completely on the ethics of the church. The morality is still built on a foundation, what they learned in the church. Does that make sense? Second generation doesn't have that foundation. So when I was in high school, I did not believe in a right or wrong because I was not first generation atheist, I was second generation. And so a lot of Gen Zs have an idea that there is no right or wrong. Okay? Now, I don't know if you've heard this statement before. If there is no God, all things are permissible. Raise your hand if you've heard this. Okay. Anybody hear of Dostoevsky? This is in the Brothers Karamazov. Anybody hear of John Paul Sartre? John Paul Sartre would quote this from the Brothers Karamazov. And the idea, if there's no God, if it feels good, do it if it's what you feel. How many remember that song? Okay. So that was my go-to. The only thing that I believed was if you got caught, it hurt. But everything was permissible. I'm going to suggest to you that that's the temptation for Generation Z because they're still asking the question, what is true? All right? And so one of the things that I think we need to do is ask them the question, what is truth? And I really believe we need to listen to them. All right. Whoops. Oh, let me go back. Okay. I love this question. In 1970, there was a song that came out called What is Truth? Anybody remember that song? No. Okay. All right. It was basically a protest song against the war in Vietnam. It was a song that was challenging, the idea. Basically, it's kind of like what this sermon is about in a sense. All right? But I want to share with you the last line of this song. Yeah, the ones that you're calling wild are going to be the leaders in a little while. Guess what? Boomers rule. I'm just kidding. Okay. This old world's wakened to a newborn day, and I solemnly swear that it'll be their way. It's our fault. And I solemnly swear that it will be their way. You better help the voice of youth find what is truth. And the lonely voice of the youth cries, what is truth? I don't think things have changed much. We just have to remember where we came from, don't we? By the way, do you know who sang this song? Johnny Cash. And when it first came out, he sang it to Richard Nixon in the White House. So I'll close with this question. Did Jesus go rogue? That's how he ended up on the cross. I think we need to remember our roots. We need to remember that people, in a sense, are all different, but in a sense, share something in common. It doesn't matter how successful they are. It doesn't matter what they've accomplished. All of us still have a hunger within us to be connected to the ultimate. Let us pray. Oh Lord, you are the ultimate. You are Lord. You are God. And in many times in our lives, we turn our backs against you and run in a different way like Jonah. But you have called us to be your church, to go out, to go where they are, either the synagogue, the agora, the marketplace, wherever we may find people. We are called to be like Lydia, to turn Philippi upside down again. Help us to be your church, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.